Welcome to our deep dive, into Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, yeah.
This classic novel really, I think, takes us to the heart of racial injustice, moral growth, and really the power of empathy.
Yeah.
We're going to break it down chapter by chapter and really unpack, I think, some of those big themes.
Yeah.
And, even if you haven't read the book in a while or if it's your first time, we're going to make sure you're right there with us in Macomb, Alabama,
Absolutely.
alongside Scout Jim Atticus and, of course, the enigmatic Boo Radley.
You know what always strikes me about this book is how Lee uses the innocence of childhood to expose the ugliness of prejudice.
Yeah.
It's like looking at a distorted reflection in a funhouse mirror.
Right.
The familiar world suddenly appears warped and unsettling.
Yeah. Okay, so let's rewind to chapter 1.
Okay.
We're introduced to Macomb, this sleepy southern town with a deeply ingrained social hierarchy.
And right away, we see the stark contrast between the Finches and families like the Cunninghams. The Finches, thanks to Scout's ancestor Simon Finch, have land and a certain standing in the community.
Right.
The Cunninghams, though, they're barely scraping by.
Yeah.
Lee makes sure we understand that poverty doesn't equate to a lack of decency, though.
Right. And that's a really important point, I think, especially right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Remember when Scout gets in trouble on her first day of school for trying to explain Walter Cunningham's situation
Exactly.
to her teacher, Miss Caroline?
It's a moment that highlights how societal structures often fail to recognize individual circumstances.
Yeah.
And it's through Scout's unfiltered perspective that we see the absurdity of those rigid systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of challenging norms,
Yeah.
let's talk about Calpurnia.
Oh, yeah.
She's not just a housekeeper, she's a pillar of strength and wisdom for Scout and Jim.
Calpurnia is fascinating because she navigates two worlds. The white world of the Finches and the black community of Macomb.
Right.
She acts as a bridge, offering Scout a different lens through which to view the world and challenging those ingrained prejudices that are already taking root.
Yeah. And we see that really, I think, come through for Scout in those early chapters, like chapters 2 and 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really lays the groundwork for her moral education.
Yeah.
She's learning about empathy and understanding, even if she doesn't always get it right.
And then, of course, there's the mystery of the Radley place,
Right.
which looms over everything.
It does.
The kids are obsessed with Boo Radley, this recluse shrouded in local legend.
Yeah, their fascination with Boo is more than just childish curiosity, though, right?
Absolutely.
There's something deeper there.
It's a way for them to grapple with their fears and confront the unknown. It's also a subtle commentary on how societies often create outsiders and demonize those who don't conform.
Yeah. In chapters 4 through 6, their fascination with Boo turns into this elaborate game.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the Boo Radley game they invent?
And the gifts they find in the knothole of the tree?
Oh, yeah.
2 shiny pennies, chewing gum, even an old pocket watch.
Like, who is doing that?
It's almost like a secret line of communication opens up between them
Right.
and this figure they've been taught to fear.
Right.
It's fascinating.
And it really is, I think, those small acts of kindness that start to chip away at the kids' preconceived notions of who Boo is.
Exactly.
And when Mr. Nathan Radley fills the knothole with cement,
Yeah.
it's like he's literally cutting off that connection, that potential for understanding.
It's sad.
Yeah, and then comes the fire at Miss Maudie's house in chapter 8.
What resonates with me in that scene is Miss Maudie's resilience.
Right.
She loses her home, but she doesn't lose her spirit.
She really doesn't.
It's a powerful lesson in how to cope with adversity.
And don't forget the blanket draped around Scout's shoulders during the fire.
Oh, yeah.
Again, we're led to believe that it was Boo,
Right.
quietly watching over them.
Right. These subtle acts of kindness foreshadow Boo's true nature,
Yeah.
slowly revealing him as a far more complex and compassionate figure than the town rumor suggests.
And then everything changes in chapter 9. Atticus makes the decision to defend Tom Robinson, a black man wrongly accused of assaulting a white woman.
This throws Macomb into turmoil.
It really does.
This is where Atticus's unwavering moral compass really shines. He knows defending Tom will make him a target, but he tells Scout he couldn't face his children if he didn't stand up for what he believed was right.
It's such a powerful statement about the responsibility we all have to speak out against injustice,
Yeah,
even when it's uncomfortable or risky.
precisely.
It's about doing what's right, regardless of the consequences.
Absolutely.
And it's in these chapters 10 and 11 that we see Atticus demonstrating different forms of courage.
Yeah.
The scene where he shoots the rabid dog,
Oh, yeah.
Jim's completely blown away by his father's hidden talent.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Atticus is this quiet, unassuming figure, yet he possesses this inner strength that comes out when it's needed.
Right, and then there's the whole ordeal with Mrs. Dubose.
Oh, Mrs.
The
Dubose.
epitome of a cranky old lady. Atticus makes Jem read to her as punishment for destroying her camellias.
But it's not about punishment, is it?
No, it's not.
It's a masterclass in empathy.
Yeah.
Atticus knows Mrs. Dubose is battling a morphine addiction, and he sees the courage in her fight.
He's teaching Jem that true courage isn't always loud or obvious.
Right.
It can be found in the quiet struggles people face every day.
And in those everyday struggles, we often discover the most profound lessons about resilience and compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. As Jem turns 12 in chapters 12 and 13, he starts to pull away from Scout.
Oh, yeah.
Grappling with, those confusing teenage years.
Trying to figure out his place in the world just as Scout is beginning to understand the complexities of her own.
Right, and then Aunt Alexandra arrives.
Oh.
Adding another layer to the Finch household dynamics.
And Alexandra is all about appearances and social standing.
Oh, she is.
She clashes with Scout's tomboyish nature and tries to mold her into a proper lady.
It's a classic battle between tradition and individuality. Scout, much like her father, resists those societal pressures to conform.
Yeah.
She's determined to be true to herself.
Good for her.
And then things escalate dramatically in chapters 14 and 15.
Oh.
A mob descends on the Maycomb jail, intent on lynching Tom Robinson.
It's a chilling reminder of the dangers of mob mentality and the pervasiveness of racial prejudice.
It really is.
Atticus, though, stands firm, determined to protect his client.
And Scout, in her innocence, unknowingly diffuses the situation.
The power of a child's perspective.
It's incredible.
By simply talking to Mr. Cunningham about his son Walter, she reminds him of their shared humanity breaking through that wall of hatred.
It highlights the importance of individual connections, of seeing beyond stereotypes and recognizing our common ground.
It's a glimmer of hope in a very dark situation.
It is, and as the trial begins in chapter 16, the weight of those societal prejudices hangs heavy in the courtroom.
It's palpable.
It's clear that this case has divided Maycomb, exposing the deep fissures that run through the community.
And as we delve into the testimonies in chapters 17 through 19, those fissures become even more apparent.
Yeah, they really do.
Welcome back to our deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird. We left off with the trial of Tom Robinson hanging in the balance. The tension in that courtroom, you can just feel it.
Oh, yeah, it's palpable. You really feel the weight of expectation, right?
Yeah.
The way this trial has become a focal point for all those unspoken prejudices simmering beneath the surface of Maycomb.
And as the testimonies unfold, we're forced to confront those prejudices head on.
Yeah.
Bob Ewell and his daughter Mayella, they paint Tom Robinson as a monster, a creditor, but their accounts are full of holes, riddled with inconsistencies and outright lies.
Atticus, though, masterfully exposes the flaws in their stories, right?
He does.
Revealing the truth that Mayella was the one who made advances toward Tom and that Bob Ewell is a violent and abusive man who's trying to cover up his own actions.
It's enraging.
And when Tom takes the stand, his testimony is heartbreaking.
It is.
He speaks with honesty and dignity, explaining how he only ever tried to help Mayella with chores out of kindness.
It's so clear that he's innocent.
He even points out that his left arm is crippled,
right,
making it physically impossible for him to have committed the assault.
The evidence is overwhelming. Tom Robinson is innocent.
But as we know, evidence isn't always enough to overcome deeply ingrained prejudice.
That's right.
The jury, swayed by societal expectations and racial bias, delivers a guilty verdict.
It's a gut punch.
It is.
A stark reminder that justice isn't always blind.
And it's a moment that shatters Jem's faith in the system, and it forces Scout to confront the harsh realities of the world she's growing up in.
Yeah.
And the tragedy doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't.
Tom, driven to desperation, tries to escape prison and is shot and killed.
Senseless.
Senseless loss of life. A consequence of a system that's rigged against him from the start.
Absolutely.
Atticus, though, tries to instill in Jem a different kind of courage.
Oh.
The courage to fight for what's right even when you know you're going to lose.
That's tough.
It's about holding on to your principles, your sense of justice, even in the face of overwhelming odds.
That's such a powerful message, and one that resonates far beyond the confines of this story.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we can't always control the outcome.
Right.
But we can control our own actions, our own commitment to doing what's right.
And even though Bob Ewell won the case, his thirst for revenge doesn't subside.
No.
He lashes out at Atticus, spits in his face, and threatens anyone associated with Tom Robinson.
It's the epitome of cowardice.
It is.
Lashing out at those who are perceived as weaker.
But Atticus, with his unwavering moral compass, refuses to stoop to Ewell's level.
Right.
He sees through Ewell's bluster, recognizing him as a pathetic and ultimately harmless figure.
But Aunt Alexandra, she's not so easily convinced.
No, she's not.
She sees the danger in Ewell's simmering resentment, and her fears are tragically realized on that fateful Halloween night.
The attack on Jem and Scout is one of those suspenseful moments in the book. It's a terrifying reminder that even in a seemingly idyllic town like Maycomb, darkness can lurk in unexpected places.
And then out of the shadows emerges Boo Radley,
Boo is
the reclusive figure who's been the subject of so much speculation and fear. He becomes their unlikely savior, intervening in the struggle and protecting them from Ewell's violence.
It's a moment of revelation, right?
It's
a complete reversal of expectations.
The monster the children imagine turns out to be a guardian angel, a protector of innocence.
Right. And in that moment, all the prejudice and fear that surrounded Boo Radley melts away, replaced by gratitude and a profound sense of humanity.
It's really beautiful.
And then comes the moral dilemma that has haunted readers for generations.
Oh.
Bob Ewell is found dead, and the question arises, who killed him?
Right.
Sheriff Tate arrives on the scene and quickly determines that Ewell fell on his own knife, a convenient explanation that protects Boo Radley from scrutiny.
Yeah.
Atticus, though, is torn.
He believes in upholding the law, in seeking justice. But he also recognizes the extraordinary circumstances and the need to protect the vulnerable.
It's a clash between principle and compassion.
It is.
And it's a question that continues to resonate with us today. When is it okay to bend the rules?
Yeah.
When does mercy outweigh the letter of the law?
It's a question with no easy answers, and Lee leaves it for us to grapple with, to examine our own beliefs about justice and empathy.
And ultimately, Atticus chooses to protect Boo, agreeing to go along with Sheriff Tate's version of events.
Yeah.
He recognizes that exposing Boo to a trial, to the harsh glare of public scrutiny, would be an act of cruelty, a punishment for an act of heroism.
It's a decision born out of a deep understanding of human nature, a recognition that sometimes the kindest act is to shield someone from the world's harsh judgments.
Absolutely, and it's a decision that resonates with the book's central theme of empathy.
Right.
Of seeing the world through the eyes of others and acting with compassion even when it's difficult.
And as we move into the final chapter, we see that act of compassion reciprocated.
Scout, walking Boo home, sees the world from his perspective for the first time.
Wow.
She recognizes the courage it took for him to step out of the shadows and save her and Jem.
It's a moment of profound understanding, a bridge built between two worlds that once seemed so separate.
And as Scout stands on Boo's porch, looking out at the familiar landmarks of her neighborhood, she sees them with new eyes through the lens of empathy and gratitude.
And that final image of Scout seeing the world through Boo's eyes leaves us with a sense of hope, a belief that even in a world full of prejudice and injustice, empathy can prevail.
It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism are those that go unseen, those acts of quiet kindness and compassion that make the world a little bit brighter.
It's the power of understanding, the ability to step outside our own limited perspectives and see the world through the eyes of others, that ultimately leads to healing, to connection, and to a more just and compassionate society.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the plot and the characters, but I think it's time to delve a little deeper into some of the symbols that Lee uses to enhance those powerful themes. One that stands out, of course, is the Mockingbird itself.
Yes, the Mockingbird.
Atticus tells Scout, "It's a sin to kill a mockingbird. They don't do any harm," he explains. "They just sing beautiful songs for our enjoyment." To harm a mockingbird is to commit an act of senseless cruelty.
And throughout the novel, several characters become associated with this idea of innocence.
Right.
Of being unjustly persecuted or marginalized.
Tom Robinson is the most obvious example. He's falsely accused, convicted, and ultimately killed for a crime. He didn't commit a victim of the deep-seated racism that permeates Maycomb.
But there's also Boo Radley.
Oh.
He's ostracized and feared because he's different, because he doesn't fit into the narrow confines of Maycomb's societal expectations.
And you can even argue that Scout herself is a kind of mockingbird.
Oh,
she's a child still learning about the world. But she possesses a natural sense of justice and fairness that often clashes with the prejudices of her community.
It's interesting how Lee uses the symbol of the mockingbird to connect these seemingly disparate characters.
It is.
Highlighting the universality of prejudice and the ways in which innocence is often trampled by those in power.
And another powerful symbol is the Radley place itself.
Okay.
At the beginning of the story, it represents everything that the children fear.
Right.
The unknown, the things that lurk in the shadows. It's a place fueled by rumors and superstitions, a physical manifestation of the town's collective anxieties.
But as the story progresses and the children's understanding of Boo Radley evolves, the Radley place undergoes a transformation. It becomes a symbol of compassion, of hidden depths of the kindness that can exist even in the most unexpected places.
And the fact that Boo ultimately emerges from this place of shadows to protect the children reinforces that idea that what we fear is often not what it seems. It's a reminder to look beyond the surface, to challenge our assumptions, and to recognize the humanity that exists even in those we might initially perceive as different or threatening.
It's powerful.
Lee's use of symbolism adds such depth and richness to the story, inviting us to think more critically about the characters and the themes she's exploring.
It's what elevates To Kill a Mockingbird beyond a simple tale of racial injustice and moral growth.
Yeah.
It becomes a meditation on the complexities of human nature, the power of empathy, and the enduring struggle for justice in a world that's often unfair and unforgiving.
Now, while To Kill a Mockingbird is widely celebrated as a classic, it's also important to acknowledge that it has faced some criticism over the years.
Yes, there have been critiques, particularly regarding the portrayal of certain characters and the book's handling of racial dynamics. Some critics argue that the novel, while condemning racism, still presents a somewhat idealized view of the South and doesn't fully grapple with the systemic nature of racial injustice.
And some feel that the black characters, while portrayed sympathetically, are largely defined by their relationships to the white characters and don't have enough agency in the story.
It's important to engage with those critiques thoughtfully
Right.
and to recognize that perspectives on race and representation have evolved since the book's publication in 1960.
Reading To Kill a Mockingbird through a contemporary lens allows us to appreciate its strengths while also acknowledging its limitations. It invites us to have those difficult conversations about race, justice, and representation, and to consider how the book's message might be interpreted differently today.
It's about having a nuanced understanding of its historical context and engaging with the text critically. And even with those critiques, To Kill a Mockingbird remains a powerful and thought-provoking work of literature that continues to spark important conversations about race justice and the importance of empathy.
It's a reminder that the journey toward a more just and equitable society is ongoing, and that we must continually challenge our own biases and assumptions.
And in our final part, we'll explore the enduring legacy of To Kill a Mockingbird, its impact on popular culture, and its continued relevance in today's world.
Welcome back to our deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird. We've journeyed through the heart of Maycomb, explored its complex characters, and unpacked those powerful themes and that symbolism. Now, I'm curious, what about this book makes it a timeless classic? Why does it still resonate so deeply with readers, decades after its publication?
It's fascinating, isn't it? To Kill a Mockingbird has sold over 40 million copies worldwide, been translated into over 40 languages, and it's still a staple in classrooms. I think one reason for its enduring appeal is its universality. While the story is rooted in a specific time and place, the themes it explores racial injustice, moral courage, the search for identity. They transcend those boundaries. They speak to something fundamental about the human experience.
And Lee does a brilliant job, I think, of making those complex themes accessible to a wide audience. Using Scout as our narrator, we experience those events through the lens of childhood, right? With all its innocence and wonder.
Exactly. We're right there with Scout as she grapples with these big questions about right and wrong, about justice and prejudice. We see the world through her eyes, and that allows us to connect with the story on a deeply personal level, regardless of our own backgrounds or experiences.
And the characters themselves have become cultural icons. Atticus Finch, especially, is often held up as a model of integrity and moral courage. He stands firm in his beliefs even when faced with intense pressure and hostility from his community.
He's the kind of person we all wish we could be, the unwavering champion of justice, the voice of reason in a world that often feels chaotic and unfair. But what makes Atticus so compelling is that he's not a superhero. He's a flawed human being, a single father trying to raise his children to be decent people in a world that often makes decency feel impossible.
And let's not forget Scout's own journey of growth throughout the story. She starts out with this childlike innocence, but through her experiences and interactions with the people of Maycomb, she gains a deeper understanding of the complexities of the world.
She learns about the power of empathy, the importance of seeing beyond the surface, and the courage it takes to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's unpopular. And her transformation throughout the novel is something I think many readers, especially young readers, can relate to. We see ourselves in Scout's struggles and triumphs, and her story inspires us to find our own voices and to make a difference in the world.
Of course, we can't talk about the impact of To Kill a Mockingbird without mentioning the 1962 film adaptation. Gregory Peck's portrayal of Atticus Finch is absolutely iconic.
Oh, yeah. His performance perfectly captured Atticus's quiet strength and moral conviction, and it helped solidify the character's status as a cultural symbol of justice and integrity. And the film itself was a critical and commercial success, winning 3 Academy Awards and further cementing the novel's place in popular culture.
It's amazing to think how this one story has permeated so many aspects of our culture. It's been referenced in countless other books, movies, TV shows, even songs, and it continues to spark conversations about race, justice, and the importance of empathy.
It's a testament to the power of storytelling, the way a single narrative can capture the hearts and minds of millions and inspire meaningful dialogue across generations. To Kill a Mockingbird isn't just a book, it's a cultural touchstone, a catalyst for change, and a reminder that the fight for justice and equality is a journey that requires constant vigilance and compassion.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's worth reflecting on how the novel's legacy has evolved over time.
Mhm.
We've talked about the criticisms it has faced, the ways in which perspectives on race and representation have shifted since its publication.
It's a testament to the book's power that it can spark such passionate debate and critical analysis even decades later. And I think it's crucial that we engage with those different viewpoints thoughtfully and respectfully.
We can appreciate the novel's strengths, its timeless themes, its unforgettable characters, its call for empathy and understanding, while also acknowledging its limitations and recognizing that our understanding of the world is constantly evolving.
It's a reminder that no work of art exists in a vacuum. It's shaped by its historical context, by the author's lived experience, and by the evolving perspectives of its readers. And engaging with To Kill a Mockingbird through a critical lens allows us to have those important conversations about race, justice, and representation conversations that are essential to building a more equitable and compassionate society.
So as we close the book on this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. How will you carry the lessons of To Kill a Mockingbird with you in your own life? What resonates with you most about this story? Is it Atticus's unwavering commitment to Justice Scout's journey of growth and understanding, or Boo Radley's quiet heroism? Whatever it is, I encourage you to hold those lessons close, to allow them to shape your actions and interactions in the world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this timeless classic with us, and we encourage you to continue those conversations about justice, empathy, and the power of storytelling.
Because in the end, it's those stories, the ones that challenge us, inspire us, and stay with us long after we've finished reading them, that have the power to shape our world for the better.